getting trained. In this we're all the same. We're links in the chain.
Hey, hey! We are links in the chain. Hey, I'm Dr. Lynn.
And I'm Justin.
Hey, I missed that song the last couple of times, right? We had some tech issues, so I was grooving to it, vibing to
Please
it.
excuse my side eye. That was rude. But welcome to Working It Out, Cross Generations.
Hey.
We are a mother-son duo who talks about everyday conflict and gives some tools to people out there on how to resolve some of those everyday conflicts that add up into exactly how we coexist with each other. So we got a very, very cool topic today, and I'm going to toss it over to you to tell us what we're talking about.
Yeah, so we are talking about what is considered overreacting. I love this topic because as I thought about it when we were talking about it, I thought, there's a lot to this. And if anybody here out there has ever been accused of overreacting, I'm glad you're tuning in because I think we're going to really just kind of tear this one apart and see what comes up for us, right? So for me, right, there's so much. Is there such a thing as overreacting, right? Is that really a thing or is it subjective? Right, to what people are looking at. For instance, there are cultures where there's a strong sense of passion and even a commitment to, if you're going to be in this discussion, it needs to be passionate and loud. And we interrupt each other because it's not about interrupting, it's getting in and getting the points. And at the end of it, it doesn't mean that everybody always walks away feeling like, hey, that was a great discussion. But for the most part, if you're the one that's sitting outside of that, then that just really goes against the cultural norms, right? Because that's how you're supposed to engage. That's how we know that you're committed to this subject and engaging. And I can remember a long time ago reading, I don't know if it's Dear Abby, one of those kind of letters, and there was a woman who wrote in and said that her husband, who was from a very different culture from her, and his family, when they get together, they scare because they're so loud and they love to argue. And she's like, I come from this very quiet family, and it just sounds like they're getting ready to go to blows. And my husband's always laughing at me and saying, no, we're just having a conversation. This is how we engage. And it's hard for us when someone can engage in this way. And there's other examples too, thinking about in the United States, right, where certain cultures like African American culture and even Black Caribbean culture are on a different rhythm and vibe, and often it can be very passionate. And there's this accusation, right, that we're being aggressive, or that there's more to it than meets the eye, and then there's a reason to be afraid in these conversations. But the reality is, it's the way that we get down, right? We just interact in that way. And then what is overreacting? Like, what is that even? Is it that someone yells at you? Is it that someone takes something really to heart? Like, what is it? And if you're watching, please comment right in. What do you think overreacting is? Because many of us get accused of it, which is why I'm the one to talk about it. Many of us get accused of it. And often we don't feel that we are overreacting. And sometimes we are right. And sometimes with some additional conversation, right, we can come to the conclusion that perhaps we did, or maybe we need a day or two to kind of think it over and realize that it was an overreaction. But so many things can lead to that. And I think that it's time for us to really think about how we are reacting just in general to things, because there's a difference between reacting and responding. to something. Reaction is often led through emotions, right? That there is some emotion behind reacting. And sometimes it's physiological that we talked about, getting the heat or palm sweaty, like your body is responding to the conversation. And that can lead you to react. But what does it mean for you specifically to overreact? Do you even know when you're overreacting or when you're just being you? So I love kind of dissecting this
Yeah,
with you.
I think it's interesting. One point that you definitely brought up that I want to touch on for sure is just passion, right, and what that looks like. I think that for me personally, right, as someone who, I can like joke around and all that stuff, but I really do like look at the state of the world like all the time and like where we are and really just like trying to understand like honestly how I'm maneuvering, right? Like
Right.
in the grand scheme, right? How I'm adding to whatever's going on. And so I think that in times when talking about that, right, like especially as a young black man, like passion in us often gets mistaken for anger.
Yeah.
It often gets mistaken for unsafety, right?
Mhm.
When I know the same way I'm passionate about the New York Giants or the Rangers or the Knicks, and sometimes sports arguments get heated like that, without any real safety being an issue, like without safety being an issue, of course. Um, I can get like that when it comes to talking about the world and like what's going on and who's got power and what positions and what they're doing with it and what that means for us, everyday people, right? Like again, everyday conflicts add up to, culture and all of these things that if unchecked can become unhealthy.
Mhm.
And so I think for me, my entire life in understanding not only who I am, how it fits into this world, and all of that stuff has been about finding that line,
Yeah.
right? Like I know that with certain things that are going on in the world, like it's okay to cry about, right? It's okay to feel a way about. It's okay to have your palms sweaty, right, and or things of that nature, and have to
Yeah.
even sometimes remove yourself to address that, right? It's more about for me. I think when people say like you're overreacting or when you're, all of this is when people's like fight or flight comes in.
Yep.
And I think that again, when it goes unchecked, it only creates more of, you know, it, the reality that you're painting in your brain that this is an unsafe situation or this is a right. So I have to fight my way out of it. And so I think that for me, as a young man of color, right? Like, I never want to be silent. I never want to be, compromising of myself and of my, feelings and all of these things. However, if we don't provide more safety in these moments to say, okay, I know this person, I know this isn't going in a violent direction, or I know that this isn't, something triggered at me, right? So let's let them get this out. I think that we can honestly get to a point where this isn't even really a question in the sense of, we've normalized our reactions, our chemical
Yeah.
reactions to these, situations, these things that just don't align with, our values and all of these things, right? And so,
And giving ourselves permission to act in
right,
that way,
I
right?
agree for sure. I think I brought this up before, but well, I'll actually bring this into my generational take because that's perfect. It fits my generational take. But I think for my generation, right, we are very like emotional, like generation. As we said here before, right, we will burn down whatever doesn't feel right with no plans of what we're gonna build on the back end, right?
Yeah,
Like
right.
we will do that, and I do think that there is value in that. However, you know again, I think we need to push the message that we're talking about even more of just like it's okay to feel things.
Right.
It's okay to, in a moment, right, let a person, if they got to just vent it out, if they got to just like stomp it out, if they got to whatever it is, like, literally just talking it out, yelling it out, screaming it out sometimes, leaving that up to, less interpretation, I
Mhm.
guess, right? I think that the more of anything that we think and feed of those thoughts, the more chance that that becomes real.
Mhm.
So not seeing those things as negative and seeing those things as honestly an invitation in some respects of like, wow, this person's kind of letting me in on really like what they're feeling, right? Letting me in and feeling safe enough to get this out, something that's clearly been building up, right?
Right.
I think one thing that I wanted to bring to the table here was a situation in which, with all, some of my guys, they're some of my best friends, right? Shout out my guys. There was, a code in our friend group that very much was broken and a trust that was, tainted and all of these things, right? We really were having a very serious conflict
Okay.
as friends. And so, being that I had some of a role in that, I didn't do, the thing or the things that this person felt upset by. But I was just in, proximity and we're all close and stuff. So I was there and
Mhm.
whatever. And I noticed that my friend who was upset and rightfully so, really like on top of that had other things going on.
Right.
And so in this moment of him, turning the situation up, he's trying to bring it to a fight. He's trying to,
Mhm.
and we completely understand there are certain situations where, that is a tool that you have to use. We are
Right.
very much aware of that. However, I gauged the situation. I scanned the room. I listened a little deeper into really what was there, right? And it wasn't even necessarily, the act, I guess, that pissed him off so much. It
Mhm.
was the principle around it.
Okay.
And clearly that's something that, I personally think can be talked around, right?
Mhm.
When we talk about morals, we talk about values. I don't think that, you need that one tool in every one of those situations. And so while my friend who's reacting,
Right.
he's not responding. He's
Mhm.
very much,
Yeah.
stepping back in a, all right, well, if this kid's coming at me, like this is
Mhm.
what we're gonna do. And I literally, without even having to get in between them, without even, I'm like, bro, it's not even going there. Like,
Mhm.
if you listen to what he's saying,
Right.
you would know, like, as hurt as he is, as upset as he is, as much as he's yelling at you right now, like, he's actually trying to invite you into understanding exactly where a line was crossed and why he's feeling a way that he's feeling. And when we got there, I noticed everyone in the room kind of like be taken aback by that, because I
Right.
don't think anyone has, especially my generation, has given them a space to say, bro, like
Right.
what you're feeling is valid.
Mhm.
Get it out, yell it out, stomp it out. If you got to curse us out, you got to whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? You're my guy. I love you. So get that out. You know what I mean? I can tell that you don't want to
Right.
take it to that next level. And I'm not going to use this moment as a, not a bystander, but an outside party to gas this up into
Right.
something that it
Well,
doesn't
even
need
a
to be.
friend, because you're not even an outside. But
Right,
I get what you're
right,
saying
right.
by that,
In the
but
situation, I
yeah,
mean, yeah.
right. But how many people have skills like you? Mama got him started in the business at 10 years old. There you go. But really, I love what you just said, because it was so beautiful that, hey, as friends, as a friend group, we should be able to hold this energy and understand and really listen.
Yeah.
And when for a long time, I still do it, but I did mediation, civil court mediation, and part of the work for me was to say, I got to listen through the venting to see if I can hear what this is about. Right. And that's essentially what I'm hearing in this story that you're telling us.
Yeah, I mean, we're very close. This is also, someone who's older than me. Both parties are older than me, but this is someone who's older than me. So he's very much looked out for me and, listened through, seen through some of my own moments like that.
Mhm.
And if anything, whether, he had the skills in the moment or not, and I think if anything, our generation just needs more of that.
Yeah.
We really are hurting each other left and right, hurting ourselves left and right. And I think it's because we have not given too much of a safe space for young people to say,
Mm-hmm.
you know, actually, you're not seeing things. You know, you are young, right? I get that, but you're not seeing things. This was wrong. This was something that was maybe done to you, or you know, you may be victim of, right? Therefore, your feelings around the situation are valid. I
Yeah.
don't think a lot of young people hear that, and I think that's exactly why my friends, even in that moment, were taken aback, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not even that they didn't even necessarily want to fight. It was more just like, we got to do, we got to do, we got to do what we got to do. And
Mm-hmm.
even then, I was like, the fact that that is more of a leading thought than just like hearing each other out
Mm-hmm.
with the intent of really just listening to each other and
Right.
saying what needs to be said the way that they need to get it out, right? I think, you know, there's just so much more value in that. And he, you know, we talk about that to this day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this was something that I think it was like last summer,
Right.
which isn't, you know, too long ago, but we still talk about it in the sense of, you know, you know, where we are and where we want to go as individuals, but also as friends and all that stuff. And, you know, one of those things that we all say is that moment there, right? Like where we really could hold each other, talk it out, right? All that stuff. Even leave upset with each other, but
Mm-hmm.
still feeling a little bit more safe in that.
Right.
That's something that we definitely want to continue on. So I definitely appreciate that.
But I want to ask this question, and you know, this is a friend group that's mostly males
Yes.
who identify as male. Oh, so I want to ask the question: given the way that males are socialized in this society, is we got to do what we got to do, throw hands? Is that an overreaction, or I'm,
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and you know, I don't want to spend so much time. So I want to make sure we
yeah, we
move
will,
on,
we will. Well, go ahead. I'll shorten mine because I love that. Yeah.
I think I think in some cases, yes,
Mm-hmm.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense of, you know, people do have skills in them, the skills in them that we're talking about here,
Mm-hmm.
right? To communicate, to listen, to, you know, empathize, to even just like paraphrase, right? Like people do have these things in them. And I think that, you know, there is this sort of, you know, business take on even that kind of like energy exchange of a fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we do try to put like parameters around it. You know, you'll hear people say like, you know, just get it off for 30 seconds and then after that shake hands, whatever, right? And I think that if we're in like a business mode all the time, if we're in a transaction mode all the time, right, then we're not really leaving um, enough open to investigate feelings and to, you know, feel safe in our feelings. And so I think because we're already just so like, let's move, let's move, let's move. Um, at times it can be just because, you know, you're not. Too much of anything is unhealthy, right? So I think if you're not giving any time, space to, this is what I'm feeling, I'm going to hold energy for that, I'm going to hold space for that, and I'm not going to, you know, react
Mm-hmm.
or respond right now, right? And giving yourself that time, I think if we encourage more of that, then I think that, you know, men won't really overreact in
Mm-hmm.
the sense of like, you know, let me inflict this pain on you and then
Right.
just go back to business.
Right.
So I think in some cases, right, where your back's against the wall, okay, sure, you know, safety is everything. You got to do what you got to do, and then I think that, you know, part of safety comes emotional safety.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we aren't given that much emotional safety to say, you know, when things are tough, like, yeah, bro, like things are tough right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's just what that is.
Right.
Then it only leaves, you know, more space to feel like, you know, we're back to business as usual. And then when business doesn't go well, then it's a blow up and all these
Mm-hmm.
things. So it's a mixed bag, but I think that, we definitely just need more space as you know, young men especially, to be in our emotions and be in our feelings, right? Like at the end of the day, we're losing young men all the time, left and right too. I can say that, you know, with passion, and I think that we got to talk more.
Yeah.
I think we got to talk more. We got to hold space more. It's just,
Yeah.
it's that simple. We're in business mode already so much. We're thinking about how we're socialized all the time. And, you know, we want to break out of that. I think a lot of men want to break out of that. But again, if you're not given the space, then you don't know how. If you're not exposed, then you don't know how. And I think in that moment for my friends, I just want to be the exposure.
Mhm.
I don't want to have the answers. I don't want to do anything. You know, I really just was like, bro, let him get it out. I'd rather you get it out in this way than any of us leave here bloody or whatever, hurting ourselves, right? Anything of that nature, hurting someone else, right? That's where stuff gets crazy, and we know that. But it doesn't take much to get there, especially the man. So,
but this is a generation, yours, the one before you, of more higher numbers of anxiety and depression, and if you are not able to release that, get help for that, then the nature of overreacting becomes a part of who you are or how you engage in conversation. And that's, I would say that for that generation, but for my generation, I think it's important for us to understand that, to know it's not like we didn't have anxiety and depression. They didn't have names for it, right? Right. It was just like, you know, you feel blue today, maybe you feel down, but you didn't know like that there's actually chemical responses to a lot of things that are happening in our life. But one of the things I know I grew up with is the overreaction was a huge part of what I was exposed to. I can it's sad, but it's so sad that it's funny. I can remember that I think I was probably about 10 or 11, and my mom yelled a lot. You know, she got yelled at a lot and hit, beat, all of that stuff, because she got beyond hit, right? So that's how she dealt with us. And at one point I said to my dad, I'm like, you know, she yells too much. And I think he was trying to help me, and apparently went back and told my mom. So she came out of the next day. I think she came out of her room and she said, "You think I yell so much? Well, if you wouldn't do anything to make me mad, I wouldn't." And I was just in that moment going like, wow, you know, talk about overreacting to overreacting, right? Because that's essentially what I meant by her yelling too much. She's like, she's overreacting too much. So she overreacted to being told that I felt like she was overreacting. And it, in my generation, I experienced a lot of yelling and wondering, and then praise for the yelling if it was parents yelling at their kids. Like my mom had a saying, "Oh, I just heard Mrs. So and so reading her son the Riot Act," and just being proud that the parents did that. And I feel like it really was not. They did not really look at whether or not what they were doing was actually called for, but it was a release. And because of the authority of being a parent, they allowed themselves and even encouraged themselves to be able to release whatever that they were feeling on their kids. Uh, so I think it's important to really think about what is for yourself an overreaction as opposed to a reaction, as opposed to a response. Because we did do a show on responding versus reacting, and y'all should go check it out if you missed that episode. And one more thing I want to say is you brought up this thing about being a black man. Well, angry black woman is the stereotype that I'm often confronted with. And I know, I know, I check myself, especially when I'm in situations, particularly like if I was coming to school for either you or your brother, and I was going to be interacting with authority, right? I check myself for how I do that. And I always that I had passion, and I've always been accused of being loud, and I don't care. I just speak like that. But in any case, I I was just speaking with passion and conviction, and I'm always getting the, oh, Oh, you got the feedback. Your mom's a tough cookie. Like I wasn't even trying to be a tough cookie
Oh my
in that
gosh.
situation.
Yeah.
I was just speaking up for what I thought would the teacher should understand about you.
Yeah.
You know, if you're teaching my job. But in any case, the deal is, uh, you gotta. There are some things that really you can anticipate might cause an overreaction from someone. And we want to just go through that with you now so that at least you go in thinking, this might be a conversation where someone might take it the wrong way, or it might hit some wounds or triggers. And so we want to say the things that we think might be the top 3. Mhm.
First one, finances. This is a very touchy subject for people. And I think if you are veering into this conversation, right? I don't even know. I just wouldn't assume nothing. I wouldn't tell someone what to do about nothing, right? I just wouldn't. It's a touchy subject. People definitely feel away, and I think rightfully so, right? I think people are all in different places in their life and due to different things, right? And so we definitely want to speak with more, I think, consideration and like openness when it comes to, I think, people's finances, their lifestyle, however you want to phrase that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's touchy for people.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're living together, sharing expenses, you gotta touch this one. It's why it's the biggest one for people who are in relationship, like committed relationship. This is the biggest thing that they argue about. Yep. And so you gotta touch this one. But the other thing is too, you ever been out with friends and the bill comes? Like, yo, you never chip in, right? It's like, what's up with you? That absolutely could cause overreaction.
Yeah, I'm working on that personally. I'm working on that personally. I'll just say that. Next, family. I think this is huge, right? I think the people that make someone who they are, right? All of what they are and who they are, right? I think that again, openness and consideration. You never want to assume anything, and I think that uh, curiosity will really take you far. I really do preach that, in all of these and in all of what I do in my personal life. I ask a lot of questions. I'm question oriented. I don't even necessarily want an answer sometimes. Sometimes I'm looking for one. I'm just trying to keep a conversation going, or I'm curious and whatever it is. And so I think that when we start veering into like stuff I know I've heard is like the whole like who raised you kind of thing, and like oof. And that never ends well.
Right.
It never ends well. And I think regardless of situation, regardless of what it is, right? I think that we have to know our lines, and that people's families are people's families, and they're going to stand behind that person as they are, all those people are part of that one person, right? They're in that one person. So
Yeah.
I think there's value in that. I think there's value in that, and not jumping at the first like difference and seeing that as like maybe like a red flag or like something to be weary of, right? I think it's interesting.
Or to tell them, plus I've experienced that, is people telling you how to raise your children, right?
Oh my gosh.
Oh Lord. Or I mean, because I've experienced it on the end of being too nice, or being not laying down the law, or bringing down the hammer, that kind of thing. Or I've experienced people who have uh, criticized parents that they think you shouldn't be hitting them, or you shouldn't be speaking to them in that way, and it can be close. I've seen grandparents who've tried to talk to their own kids and say, hey, I think you're being too hard, or what, and that don't go well a lot, unless you really are committed, both of you, to having that courageous conversation in a ways where you're listening to one another.
Yeah, I really do emphasize heavily like that I'm not trying to ever tell someone, especially in this work, like what to do with your family, what to do with your children. simply showing, you know, our dynamic and how it's helped me and things of that nature, right? I know I've seen, you know, I have friends who are young parents, right, and stuff like that. So like watching them like discipline their child, right? We could be on the phone talking 1 minute and then they're yelling at their kid for something, right? And I'm because you know, it ain't mine.
That's a
It ain't
big
mine.
one.
It ain't mine to hold. So I'm not gonna act like it is. I'm not gonna
Or
make it something.
siblings,
Yeah.
the way that they go at it, interact, all of those things. Yeah.
Sure.
And you know each other's wounds.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure.
So yeah, so
Sure.
overreaction can happen very quickly and easily.
Sure. And this is something that I added very personally, but someone's intelligence. I've noticed that, you know, people do get at people for their intelligence and like what they've been exposed to, right? And I think that I know for me personally, like I don't really like it. I mean, like I don't think anyone likes it, but like I know for me, like that's something where I do have to start like using my skills, and I do have to start, you know, doing all that because I know I'm in, you know, corporate spaces for work and things of that nature, and you know, people have degrees in this and degrees in that and degrees. So you know, though, hey, walk with that, proud, right? You know, if you're you know a doctor out there, right? You got the 2 letters in front of your name. I say on that proudly, right? But I think that coming at other people for possibly, you know, going about their education in another way definitely is just not inviting, right? It's definitely not inviting. I think it only will feed the wolf that says let's overreact, right? And so just something that I've noticed, you know, people really do take education seriously, and I totally feel that, right? I totally get that, and I think that if anything, as long as we're all, you know, educating ourselves in some way, in a way that's digestible, in a way that, you know, really is informed of, you know, how the world works and our place in it, then I think that should be good enough. But for some people, it's not.
Yeah, but it's not even just the education. It's just that people will call somebody stupid or dumb in a minute, right? And come at their natural intelligence, not even whether they're educated all the time, but just when they think that they're not very smart, or they will come at your intelligence. We know you think you're smarter than everybody or whatever, but that's definitely one where you're going to have some people who may indeed overreact. And I threw in a bonus one. I think that just simply from my own experience with my mom, right? That when you're getting ready to accuse someone of overreacting, be prepared that they may in fact overreact even more, right? According to what you think overreacting is. But that's when I've seen not just my mom, but other people really lose it because you're like, why are you overreacting to this? Those are fighting words for some people because they feel what they feel. They feel that it's important for them to react in that way. They feel like they're not overreacting. They feel like they're reacting from a space of the really great emotional content. But this one, absolutely, beware, be careful, be sure you know how to handle this, because when you tell someone they're overreacting, I can almost guarantee you that they're going to overreact even more. So what are you going to do, right? In both the situation of being accused of overreacting, and if you yourself uh, feel like I am overreacting. So we want to give you some tips for that. First, we believe very heavily in breathing. And I want to say this. I know I've said the importance of breathing and how it affects every organ of our body and how we have the ability to control and therefore be able to bring our physiology down. But more and more these days, there are breathing courses. And you might say, well, I know how to breathe. We really don't. Not to be able to access the breath in a way that it really does help us. That it clears the mind, that it gives us that the ability to be in a space where we can really hold these conversations where we can release some of the things that are in us. So to breathe properly, to give yourself that pause in that space, and to be able to breathe in through the nose. I'll say to the count of three, hold it to the count of three. And whether you breathe out through the mouth or the nose to the count of three, to be able to do that well and repeat it several times can give you the space for either if you're saying to yourself, I'm really am, like they touched something to me, I am overreacting to this, or if they're saying to you, you are overreacting, then one way that you can respond is to really zero in on the breath and take your breaths.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can say personally for myself that breathing has saved me from certain, external situations, yes, but I would say more of save me from myself and save me from my own potential of, going over that line.
Yeah.
So I do second very much that breathing helps and it works.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So, hey, you're overreacting, right? That hits you, right? And before you decide, no, I'm not, scan the room. Check out if the other folks are looking at you the same way this person's looking at you, right? Or if the room is going quiet. If folks are thinking, yeah, there's some truth to that. You might want to do that first before you decide to say that you're not, or you'll do that and you decide, I probably am, and I need to just respect that that's what's happening in the room. And I'm not saying that's 100%, because sometimes you could be in a room with folks who really are on the opposite side of the issue that you're talking about, and therefore as a technique, as a strategy, they'll accuse you of overreacting. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about, though, in just like everyday ordinary situations, you want to scan the room and check out and see what what other folks might be feeling that are there in the room.
I agree. And I think in that you'll be able to spot, maybe one or two that hopefully, have your back and know you well enough to, give you a little signal of like, brother, like this is like me and you, absolutely, this is very valuable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like for your own sake in this moment, right? Like, it's not the safest environment. And I think that those are people that, if you don't have, then it's harder, but important to, to try to become that person, right? Because then you'll only attract more of that, as that's who you are, right? And so shout out to some of those people in my life who have happily given me that little signal, like, brother, come outside with me and this is great, right? But like for you, I need you to
right. If people are doing this little signal, like you look across the room and people like, then that's probably a right reading, especially if they know you.
That's where work is pretty clutch for us. So, yeah.
Ask questions, right? And one of the things that I will say about asking questions, that the first questions may need to be to yourself.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, what's happening here? I know I said in a previous episode that the conflict that we're in is not the conflict that we're in the moment, right? It really isn't. We are often reliving and being rewounded by previous conflicts, right? So someone says something in the current conflict, but that's really hit you in a space of a wound that has not been healed from previous conflicts. And since most of us don't do conflict well, that's pretty much across the board. A lot of us are carrying those wounds. And you want to ask a question like, what did I just do? What did I just say? And what tone did I say it? At what decibel did I say it? And what does that mean for this situation. The other thing that, interestingly enough, that I thought about in terms of overreacting is when you do the silence. Because we're always looking for that overreaction of being loud and strong, right? And violent, even verbally violent. But I'm talking about you can overreact by simply giving the silent treatment. And there's actually nothing simple about that because I've experienced that as well. Listen, y'all, we try to be truthful on this show, and y'all gonna hear me talk about my mom a lot. God bless her. I love her. She was a great mom, but she had a lot of work to do that she didn't do. And she was one for being silent and using that against us, or stomping out the room and not talking to us. That too is overreaction. And in those moments, you really should be questioning yourself. What is this about for me? What I ask myself that question a lot of times. Sometimes I really, it's harder to do it in the moment, but if I can get the grace of next day, when I sit with myself, I do ask myself those questions. What was that really about? Why did you react in that way? What's happening for you? And what was happening? What's happening for you now as you're thinking about it? And what was happening in that moment? Is there any truth to what they've said about you? Those are good questions for yourself. If you want to ask them questions, then you can say, well, why do you think I'm overreacting, right? What's making you say that? Now, look, if you hit the roof and screamed everybody down, they're probably just going to look at you and go, what? What do you mean? But if they may be looking at it subjectively from their lens, which we all do, they may have some insight for you. I think you're overreacting because I've never seen you like this. Like you never respond like that, right? Or today you seemed like something wasn't right, and now you're reacting in this way in the situation. So questions can really be good for the situation.
I agree, and I think this actually ties into our bonus. So check in with yourself, right? I think you said it. A lot of these questions, they got to start with you. I think that in a world where questions and curiosity is not necessarily also welcomed in every respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that especially within yourself, right? People don't want you to grow, right? Like people don't want you to find these things out for yourself. You don't want you to step out of, whatever they know you to be, right? And so when you ask yourself these questions, when you're curious with yourself, when you genuinely are, even just asking the questions or checking in with yourself, just as a model standpoint, right? Sometimes we don't even need the answers in that moment, right? Sometimes we can let stuff just sit with us and we can go on about our day and ruminate and then in a healthy way, right? And that's when sometimes we get our answers that we don't even expect, right? Out of nowhere, we can get an answer to something that we've been sitting on for a week or something. But just because you asked that question, you checked in with yourself, you said, I'm curious about this, or this is something that I want to take a look at. Why do I respond, or why did I respond in this way with this person when I've been in this situation before? Whatever it is, right? I think that we need more models like that in the world. And I think the only way we do that and achieve that in the world and in the grand schemes, if we start doing it for ourselves, right? We really do believe in, sweeping in front of your own doorstep so that you can help other people and help other people efficiently. So I think check in with yourself first, be a little selfish first in those moments of, really looking for clarity, because it is your life. It's your, feelings. It's your chemical makeup that you're going to have to do the work to not only love one day, but have respect for one day. So.
Yeah, I think that you've checking in with yourself is something that it's a step that most people don't do. If they do it, particularly in these kinds of situations, it's to validate that reaction, right? I'm right, they're wrong. They just don't understand. They're always doing this to me. that's not a good check-in. I'm sorry, folks. That's not a good check-in. Check-in is really to just try to examine what's happening with you. Maybe this isn't the first time that you've reacted like this. Maybe this is a new pattern for you, and you need to really say that to yourself. Hey, this is like the sixth or seventh time you came off like this, and is it really sufficient in this situation or in all of these situations? I think that we are not clear that we know ourselves better than we think we do.
Mm,
And so
mm,
checking in can really help us tap into what are we not dealing with? What are we hiding from ourselves and other people? What have we not uh, given real attention to that's sitting with us right now? And the better you know yourself, the better you'll be able to answer those questions. But the more you check in with yourself, the better you'll get to know yourself.
yeah, exactly it. Thank you. So I think for how I want to wrap up and just close out, um, I think I want to say that whatever you're feeling in this very emotional time right now is valid. I think that I want to say you do know yourself better than anyone else knows you,
Mm.
and there's power in that. And too much of anything can be unhealthy. So I think that reactions and feelings and all of these things are a good thing, and I think that we're supposed to feel them, and I think we're supposed to give space for them, right? But remember, there's always a line in everything to be drawn, and I think that find that line for yourself. Of course, outside of physical violence and inflicting pain on other people or yourself, right? Um, we want to make sure that people are drawing those lines and then not crossing them, right? Or if they do cross them, that there's a space for genuine, you know, bringing that person back to what they know, what they're working on, whatever it is, right? We also live in a society where if you make a mistake, it's like that thing defines you, right? Whatever it is, and so I think we need to give space. I think
Mm.
we need to give grace at times too. I think we need to, you know, uh,
Yep.
not only just be honest with ourselves, but hold ourselves too. Like not just accountable. Like we can actually hold ourselves
Yeah.
and you know, again, draw those lines to make sure that you're safe, other people are safe. But whatever you're feeling in these heightened times, it's definitely valid. Things are going on. We're losing people daily and in tragic ways, and you know, conversations like this, as great as they are, they're not exactly a part of the status quo,
Right.
right? And so, um, we have to give ourselves some grace if we're going to build up to the world that we really are capable of achieving.
Mm-hmm.
We know 400 years of, transaction and stripping of people's souls and identities and all of that, right? So we need to give ourselves some grace if we're going to achieve 400 years of love and curiosity and openness and correction, right? Instead of necessarily consequence in every single situation. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I love that, all of it. And I'm going to talk to your generation and millennials and say, you grew up on social media. And I do not think that there's enough information out there to really share with you and tell you and educate you on the impact of growing up on social media. But I can say that when everybody has an opinion about you, the likelihood that you will overreact in situations is a lot higher than it ever was for my generation. As I'll tell you for myself, I hated people having opinions about me, and I had to hear them all the time. friends will do that to each other, or just classmates, but adults,
Yeah.
I didn't hear it in the bulk so much coming at you about you, that your nervous system is taking it all in and it's taking hits. So when you have a conversation with anybody, you could overreact because of what is now inside of you, right? Because your body, your physiology, the brain, it all reacts. So really understand, I'm not saying it's an excuse, I'm saying it's a possible explanation for what's happening. For my generation, and right below me, we need to have grace and patience, and stop acting like we know what it's like just because we grew up. We don't know what it's like to have somebody's opinion, and most of the time is negative, right? We don't know what that's like to constantly be bombarded by that. Yes, they could turn off social media, but that's not how it goes, right? Did you turn off the TV when we were coming up, or the radio? The things that we love, the things that educated and entertained us, no, that was really hard to do. So please, folks in my generation, give grace, right? Listening ears, try to understand from them what it's like for all of that to be happening, and give love.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So please, thank you for joining us on this one. We are so grateful to every single viewer. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please keep coming back. Please share about this show. Watch us live on your big screen, e360tv.com, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV. Check us out. And for those of you who are checking us out on that, thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep coming back. Hey, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Working It Out Across Generations. You can catch replays there. You can catch us live on our Facebook page, Working It Out TV show. Also replays there. We are just so grateful for you. And I hope we shared valuable tips for you today. I hope this was a great conversation for you to be checking out.
Absolutely. And you know how we wrap things up here? Conflict is here to teach you something about yourselves. So go out and find out what that is. We are Justin and Dr. Lynne
Hey.
of Working It Out Across Generations. We'll see you next week.
Yes.